Want to speak real Turkish from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at turkishclass101.com.
Welcome to turkishclass101.com's 3 dakikada Türkçe. The fastest, easiest and most fun way to learn Turkish. Selam, ben Zehra. Tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. Hi, I'm Zehra. Nice to meet you. In this series, we're going to learn basic Turkish expressions. It's super easy and it only takes 3 minutes. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to introduce yourself in Turkish. You can do it with only 2 sentences. But first, it is important to clarify that in Turkish, there is a difference between the formal and the informal language. Let's first see how Turkish people introduce themselves in an informal situation. Selam, ben Zehra. Tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. Hi, I'm Zehra. Nice to meet you. Selam, ben Zehra. Tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. Start by saying selam, ben. Then say your name. Selam, ben Zehra. Finally, say tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. Nice to meet you. Selam, ben Zehra. Tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. And now, let's see the same sentence in formal speech. Merhaba, ben Zehra Özdemir. Tanıştığımıza çok memnun oldum. Hi, I'm Zehra Özdemir. Nice to meet you. Merhaba, ben Zehra Özdemir. Tanıştığımıza çok memnun oldum. So, what has changed from the previous introduction? Let's take a close look at this together. Selam has been substituted with the formal greeting, merhaba, Turkish for hi. Ben Zehra hasn't been changed. In both cases, ben means I am. However, during a formal self-introduction, we also say our last name. So I said Zehra Özdemir. Here you would say your full name. Finally, pay attention to the ending. We went from tanıştığımıza memnun oldum to tanıştığımıza çok memnun oldum. We have just added the Turkish word for very. In a formal sentence, saying it is very nice to meet you will make it even more polite. One more time. The informal way to introduce yourself in Turkish is selam, ben Zehra. Tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. The formal way to introduce yourself is merhaba, ben Zehra Özdemir. Tanıştığımıza çok memnun oldum. Now, it's time for Zehra's insights. When you introduce yourself, it's a good habit to shake hands. And don't worry too much about using çok when you meet with people. You won't get in trouble if you simply say, tanıştığımıza memnun oldum. As I said at the beginning of this lesson, we learn how to introduce ourselves in Turkish. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use good manners as we thank people. Hazır mısınız? Are you ready? Hadi başlayalım o zaman. So let's start then. There are several ways to thank someone. So let's start with the easiest. It is just one word. Teşekkürler. Teşekkürler. Teşekkürler means thanks. Another casual way of saying thanks is sağ ol. Sağ ol. When saying thank you, you just need to use teşekkür ederim. Teşekkür ederim. Ederim means I give. So, teşekkür ederim is like saying I give my thanks. In the last lesson, we mentioned both the informal and the formal way of speaking Turkish. If you want to be more formal, there's another phrase you should use. Çok teşekkür ederim. Çok teşekkür ederim. Let's break this phrase down. Teşekkür ederim means I give my thanks. You probably remember çok from the last lesson. It means very. And when we add it to the phrase, it strengthens teşekkür ederim and makes it more formal. How do you answer when someone thanks you? It's easy. There are basically two different ways to do it. The first is bir şey değil. Bir şey değil. Bir şey değil literally means it's nothing. You're saying that there's nothing worth thanking you for. The other way to say you're welcome is the expression sorun değil. Sorun değil. Literally, this phrase means no problem. But it has become a common and polite way to respond to someone thanking you. So, when someone says teşekkürler to you, simply reply with bir şey değil or sorun değil. Now, it's time for Zehra's insights. If you're not sure about whether to say teşekkürler or çok teşekkür ederim, keeping it simple is always your safest bet. You don't have to worry about formal or informal situations. Teşekkürler can be used with just about anyone, anywhere, and at any time. In the last lesson, we learned how to show gratitude to people by saying teşekkürler. In this lesson, we will learn some of the most common greetings used in Turkey. Hazır mısınız? Are you ready? Hadi başlayalım o zaman. So let's start then. The most used informal greeting is selam. Selam. Selam means hi or hello. Because it's so casual, we should only use this greeting with friends or relatives. If you're greeting someone you don't know, you should use a more formal phrase. Merhaba. Merhaba. Merhaba means hi or hello too. If you want to make the greeting a little bit more formal, you can say iyi günler. İyi günler. İyi günler means good morning and good afternoon. In fact, you can use it all day, from morning until evening. During the evening, we say iyi akşamlar. İyi akşamlar. In an informal parting situation, Turkish people use güle güle. Güle güle. Güle güle means goodbye. Finally, in Turkish, we have an expression meaning hope to see you soon. That can be considered both formal and informal. Görüşmek üzere. Görüşmek üzere. Now you can greet people in many different ways in Turkish. Let's review them all again. When meeting older people or someone we don't know, merhaba. When meeting friends or relatives, selam. When greeting people from morning to afternoon, iyi günler. When greeting people in the evening, iyi akşamlar. When living in an informal situation, güle güle. When living in a formal or an informal situation, görüşmek üzere. It's easy, isn't it? Now it's time for Zehra's insights. If you can't remember how to say goodbye in Turkish, you can just say bye bye. Bye bye. This expression is pretty casual, but at least nobody in Turkey will have any trouble understanding you. In the last lesson, we learned the most common forms of greetings in Turkish. Do you remember them? In this lesson, we're going to learn a very useful phrase. Do you speak English? If you find yourself in a situation where you need assistance in English, this phrase can be a lifesaver. And because you're asking it in Turkish, you can be sure that everyone will understand what you're saying, even if their answer is no. Here's the informal way to say it. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musun? İngilizce konuşabiliyor musun? In Turkish, verbs change depending on the pronoun that is used. Please notice the suffix musun at the end of the sentence. This is the informal word for you. The word before that is the verb konuşabiliyor, which means can speak. Because it is referring to you, it is conjugated konuşabiliyor musun? And you probably recognize the first word İngilizce. It means English. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musun? To learn how to conjugate verbs in more detail, please check out our Absolute Beginner series on turkishclass101.com. You can find very detailed grammar lesson and resources there. We are now going to make this sentence a bit formal. First, we need to use the formal version of you. Just take musun and add a us sound at the end to make musunuz. Everything else stays the same. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musunuz? İngilizce konuşabiliyor musunuz? If you add affedersiniz, excuse me, to the beginning, the sentence becomes even more polite. Affedersiniz. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musunuz? Affedersiniz. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musunuz? The responses you will receive could be one of these three. Evet. Yes. Evet. Biraz. A little. Biraz. Hayır. İngilizce konuşamıyorum. No, I can't speak English. Hayır. İngilizce konuşamıyorum. Now, it's time for Zehra's Insights. For those of you who are not only English speakers, you can obviously use this question with any language you need. Turkish people study other European languages at school, so maybe you will get lucky. Just substitute İngilizce with İtalyanca for Italian, Rusça for Russian, İspanyolca for Spanish, or Almanca for German. In this lesson, we mentioned the expression affedersiniz. But did you know that this could also be used as an apology? In the next lesson, we will learn this and the other ways to apologize in Turkish. It's never too late to show your good manners with Turkish people. I will see you in our next 3 dakikada Türkçe lesson. Görüşmek üzere.
Don't miss out on new videos. Click the bell. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up for more.
Selam arkadaşlar. Ben Zehra. Hi everybody. I'm Zehra. Welcome to turkishclass101.com's 3 dakikada Türkçe. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Turkish. In the last lesson, we learned the phrase affedersiniz. İngilizce konuşabiliyor musunuz? Excuse me, can you speak English? We mentioned the word affedersiniz, which means excuse me in formal Turkish. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to use affedersiniz and other words when apologizing in Turkish. We should use affedersiniz in formal situations, such as when we are ordering something in bars or restaurants. For example, affedersiniz, bir kahve alabilir miyim? Excuse me, can I get a coffee please? Affedersiniz, bir kahve alabilir miyim? We can also use it when asking a question. Affedersiniz, Sultanahmet Camii nerede? Excuse me, where is the Blue Mosque? Affedersiniz, Sultanahmet Camii nerede? Sometimes we also hear people say, kusura bakmayın, which means the same thing. You use it when you want to draw someone's attention. We always use this phrase in formal speech. Kusura bakmayın. Kusura bakmayın. The informal way to say excuse me is affedersin. Affedersin. Just like affedersiniz. We can use affedersin when asking a question or when apologizing. We can also use the word pardon. You might hear this phrase translated as forgive me in English, but it is not formal or strong at all. Turkish people use it in very casual situations. All of these phrases can be used for either excuse me or I'm sorry. But if you really want to apologize for something, it might be better to use a different phrase. That phrase is özür dilerim. It means I'm sorry and can be used in both formal and informal situations. Özür dilerim. First, we have özür, which means apology. Next, we insert the Turkish word for I give. Dilerim. Özür dilerim. Now, it's time for Zehra's insights. Please remember that in Turkey, if you accidentally bump into someone, we don't say I'm sorry, özür dilerim. Instead, we say affedersiniz or pardon. In the last lesson, we learned some words used when apologizing in Turkish, including affedersiniz and özür dilerim. In this lesson, we are going to learn numbers in Turkish. Yes, numbers, sayılar, from 1 to 10. And you're going to learn them only in 3 minutes, 3 dakika. Are you ready? Let's start then. 1 1 2 2 3 3 4 4 5 5 6 6 7 7 8 8 9 9 and finally 10 10. Okay, now repeat after me. I'll say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Great job! What is before 1? Do you know? Let's find out then. Ready? 0 0. You don't have any more excuses. You can give your friends your cell phone number in Turkish. Let's try together. We will use the phrase benim numaram, which means my number is benim numaram. Benim numaram 5 3 3 1 2 2 4 9 6 8. Can you read it by yourself? 5 3 3 1 2 2 4 9 6 8. Perfect! Do you know the Turkish word for 100? In the next lesson, we are going to learn the numbers from 11 to 100 in Turkish. In the last lesson, we learned the numbers from 1 to 10. Have you forgotten? Here, I'll tell you again. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. And now, let's continue from 11. 11 11 12 12 13 14 14 15 15 16 17 17 18 18 19 19 And finally we have 20. 20. Okay, now repeat after me. I will say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. These numbers may seem harder to remember, but if you notice, there's actually a simple pattern to them. All you need to do is add numbers to the end of on, which is 10. So for 11, you just say 10, on, and 1, 1, 11. Let's not stop at 20. Counting to 100 is super easy. Now, I'll give you the tens. 20, 20, 30, 30, 40, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60, 70, 70, 80, 80, 90, 90, and 100, 100. While you have to memorize a few of these numbers, there are a couple of tricks that will make memorizing them incredibly easy. Notice that 60 is 60 and 70 is 70. These have a lot in common with the Turkish word for 6 and 7, right? 6 is 6 and 60 is 60. And 7 is 7 and 70 is 70. 80 is 80. Doesn't it sound familiar to 8, which is 8? 8, 80. And 90, 90, is just like the others. It also sounds similar to 9, 9, 9, 90. The last thing to learn today is how to form compound numbers above 10. This is also super easy. Take the tens and simply add the numbers you learned in the previous lesson. Let's try it out. How would you say 56 in Turkish? Let's take it step by step. 50 is 50. And then add 6, 6. 56. It's done. Isn't that easy? Let's make another number. For instance, 98. Take 90, 90, and add 8, 8, 98. After only 2 lessons, you're now able to count to 100 in Turkish. In the next lesson, we are going to put your number knowledge to use. In the last lesson, we learned how to count in Turkish. I hope you spend some time practicing the numbers, because they will come in handy today. We're going to learn how to go shopping in Turkey. Before we go, you need to know how to say, how much is it? Bu kaç para? Bu kaç para? Are you ready to go to shopping in Turkey? Let's go! You see something you like and want to ask the shopkeeper how much it costs. The first thing to say to a shopkeeper is, affedersiniz. Do you remember what that means? Excuse me. Affedersiniz. Bu kaç para? Affedersiniz. Bu kaç para? If you want to be more specific when asking, how much is this? You can either point out the object or show it. If you're holding the item, you probably should use this. Bu. Affedersiniz. Bu kaç para? However, if you're pointing out the item, That would be more suitable. Affedersiniz. Şu kaç para? At this point, the shopkeeper can answer by saying bu, şu, or o, and then the price. For example, bu 21 lira. Şu 21 lira. Or o 21 lira. What number is 21? I'm not telling you. Okay. It's 21. It costs 21 liras. Now, it's time for Zehra's insights. A quicker way to ask how much is ne kadar, which literally means how much. For example, bir espresso, ne kadar? One espresso, how much? At this point, can you count liras in Turkish? We're going to learn how to do this and much more in the next lesson. I'll be waiting for you in our next 3 dakikada Türkçe lesson. Görüşmek üzere.